My father-in-law once told me that must come from the Napan Valley. He was right about one thing. Hi, welcome to my channel. I have a new story for you today.
My Wall Street husband stood in a packed courtroom and swore he would take everything. My company, my patents, even the platform that taught thousands of kids to read. He smiled at the judge like he had already won. My mother blew him a kiss from the gallery. Then I handed the judge one document. He read it twice, looked at Ryan, and whispered, "You fool." Before I tell you how I got here, drop your location in the comments. I want to know where in the world you are listening to this story. And while you are at it, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. My name is Dominique Mitchell. Most people call me Dom. 10 months ago, I was the founder and CEO of Lumen Technologies, an artificial intelligence platform that had taught over 400,000 children to read across 19 states. My company was valued at $15 million. My face had been on the cover of Wired. Senators had quoted our impact data on the Senate floor. And my husband, Ryan Calloway, 37 years old, Harvard-educated, Wall Street portfolio manager, was sitting across the aisle in a Tom Ford suit, flanked by his attorney Jeffrey Banks, telling Judge Raymond Torres that he deserved half of everything I had ever built. His attorney had filed the motion 6 months earlier. 50% of Lumen Technologies, 50% of all intellectual property, 50% of the Mitchell Legacy Trust, a trust he did not even know existed until 3 weeks before this hearing. His argument was simple. He supported me. He sacrificed for me. He stood beside me for 6 years while I built my empire, and now he wanted his half. My attorney, Priya Kapoor, sat beside me with a single leather folder on the table. She had not opened it yet. She did not need to. Everything inside that folder had been built over 9 months of silence, strategy, and patience. In the gallery behind Ryan, my mother, Gloria Mitchell, 58 years old, was sitting with her hands clasped in her lap, wearing costume jewelry because she had pawned her real rings years ago to feed a gambling addiction no one in the family knew about. She had blown Ryan a kiss when he walked in. Not me. Him. My brother Deshaun was not in the courtroom. He was in Oakland, waiting by the phone, praying that the testimony he had given 3 weeks earlier would be enough to keep him out of a federal prison. The judge adjusted his glasses. He was 62, silver-haired, born in Puerto Rico, and had been on the bench for 30 years. He had seen every kind of greed walk through his courtroom. But I do not think he had ever seen anything quite like what Priya was about to show him. "Mr. Banks," Torres said, "you may begin." And with those 3 words, the longest and most devastating day of Ryan Calloway's life officially started. 9 months before that courtroom, I was sitting cross-legged on the floor of my home office in our Nob Hill penthouse, surrounded by cold pad thai containers and 3 monitors glowing blue in the dark. It was Christmas Eve. Ryan was downstairs hosting what he called an intimate gathering, which meant 40 people I barely knew drinking Veuve Clicquot and pretending to care about each other. I could hear the jazz playlist bleeding through the floorboards. Someone laughed too loud. A glass broke. The usual symphony of people performing wealth. I should have been down there. Ryan had reminded me twice. The second time he stood in my doorway in his navy Brioni suit, smelling like bourbon and Creed Aventus, and said, "Dom, you are embarrassing me." I told him I had found something in the back-end architecture of Lumen, my platform. A routing anomaly. Data packets redirecting to an external server I had never authorized. He stared at me the way you stare at a child explaining why the sky is purple. "It is Christmas Eve, Dominique. Nobody cares about your little coding thing." He left. I heard his loafers click down the hallway. The bedroom door opened and closed. Then his footsteps faded into the laughter below. Little coding thing. Lumen had 430,000 active student users across 19 states. It had reduced third-grade reading failure rates by 31% in pilot districts. Senators had quoted our impact data on the Senate floor. But to Ryan, it was always my little coding thing. I turned back to the screen. The anomaly was subtle. Whoever planted it knew what they were doing, but not well enough. The redirect was buried inside a dormant microservice, one that had not been active since our beta launch 2 years ago. Someone had reactivated it 6 weeks earlier and attached a siphon protocol that mirrored specific financial data, board communications, investor term sheets, and revenue projections to an Amazon Web Services bucket registered under a shell account. My fingers went cold. Not from the San Francisco fog creeping through the window I had cracked open to stay awake, but from the realization that someone inside my own infrastructure was stealing my company's most sensitive information. I ran a trace route. The external server IP resolved to a commercial VPN, but the AWS bucket's billing was sloppy. It was linked to a credit card ending in 8847. I did not recognize the number. I copied it into a text file and saved it to an encrypted drive I kept in the bottom drawer of my desk, beneath a photo of my father who had died when I was 14. Dad taught me 2 things before pancreatic cancer took him. First, every system has a vulnerability. Second, never show your hand until you know exactly who is sitting at the table. I closed the terminal window, cleared my browser history out of habit, sat in the dark for a long time listening to Ryan's party wind down below me. Car doors, engine starts, the alarm system chirping as the last guest left. At 11:47 on Christmas Eve, Ryan came back upstairs. He leaned against the doorframe, tie loosened, cheeks flushed. "You missed a hell of a party," he said. "I found something," I said. "You always find something." He yawned. "Come to bed." I shut my laptop, followed him down the hall, lay beside him in our California King while he fell asleep in under 3 minutes the way he always did, like a man with absolutely nothing on his conscience. I stared at the ceiling until 2 in the morning. 8847. 4 digits that were about to dismantle everything I thought I knew about my marriage. 3 days after Christmas, I found the answer to 8847. I was not looking for it. That is the thing about secrets. They do not wait for you to be ready. They just fall out of closets like old coats you forgot you owned. Ryan had left early that morning for what he called a year-end portfolio review at Callaway Capital, his boutique hedge fund on Montgomery Street. He kissed my forehead on the way out, called me babe, told me he would bring home sushi from Kusakabe. A perfectly normal morning in a perfectly constructed lie. I needed a box of old hard drives from the garage. Lumine's original beta architecture was stored on physical backups I had made during the early days when I could not afford cloud redundancy. If someone had reactivated a dormant microservice from the beta period, I wanted to compare the original codebase against the current compromised version line by line. Our garage was Ryan's domain. He kept his Porsche Cayenne there, his golf clubs, and a filing cabinet he said contained old tax returns. I had never opened it. In 6 years of marriage, I had respected that boundary the way you respect a locked door in someone else's house. You assume it is locked for a reason, and the reason is none of your business. The hard drives were in a plastic bin on the top shelf behind the filing cabinet. I dragged Ryan's leather golf bag out of the way and reached up. The bin was heavier than I expected. It slipped. I caught it with both hands, but my elbow cracked against the filing cabinet's top drawer, and the whole thing rocked forward. The bottom drawer slid open on its own. I should have pushed it closed. I should have grabbed my hard drives and gone back upstairs and compared my code and stayed in my lane. That is what the old Dominique would have done. The Dominique who believed that trust was a fixed variable, not a conditional one. But 8847 was still burning in my mind. So I looked. The drawer was organized with the precision of a man who managed other people's millions. Manila folders, color-coded tabs, labels printed from a label maker. Most of it was what he said it was. Tax returns, insurance documents, warranty cards for appliances we no longer owned. Then I found a folder labeled Personal Consulting. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a signed retainer agreement between Ryan Callaway and Zenith Capital Partners, a company I had never heard of, for strategic financial advisory services. The fee was $15,000 per month. The second was a bank statement from a Chase account I did not know existed, showing deposits totaling $187,000 over the past 11 months. The third was a printed email from an address I recognized immediately, Megan Holt. Megan, who had been my colleague at Google before I left to build Lumen. Megan, who had attended our wedding and given us a hand-painted ceramic bowl from her trip to Oaxaca. Megan, who Ryan always said was a little intense whenever her name came up at dinner. The email was short, 5 lines, no greeting, no sign-off, just instructions. The Q3 projections are uploaded. Board deck will follow Friday. Make sure Gloria signs the guarantee before January 15th. If she pushes back, remind her what she owes. Gloria. My mother's name, typed by my husband's secret business partner, in a hidden folder, in a locked garage, 3 days after Christmas. I photographed every page with my phone, put everything back exactly the way I found it, closed the drawer, picked up my bin of hard drives. Then I walked upstairs, locked my office door, and called the only lawyer I trusted. I met Priya Kapoor 6 years ago at a legal aid fundraiser in the Mission District. I was 26, 3 months into building Lumen out of a co-working space that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. She was 39, already a partner at Kapoor and Associates, and the only person at that event who asked me what my platform actually did instead of how much it was worth. We talked for 2 hours that night. She told me about growing up in Fremont, daughter of Indian immigrants who ran a laundromat, how she put herself through Hastings Law on scholarships and stubbornness. I told her about my father, about the pancreatic cancer, about the promise I made at his hospital bed to build something that mattered. She handed me her card and said, "When the world tries to take it from you, and it will, call me first." I kept that card in the bottom drawer of my desk for 6 years, right next to the encrypted drive, right next to my father's photograph. On December 28th, at 9:14 in the morning, I used it. She picked up on the second ring. "Priya Kapoor." "Priya, it is Dominique Mitchell. We met at the Legal Aid Gala in 20... I know who you are, Dom. I have been following Lumen since your Series B. Congratulations on the district expansion, by the way. 19 states is no joke." She paused. "But you are not calling me on a Saturday morning between Christmas and New Year to talk about reading scores. What happened?" I told her everything. The code anomaly on Christmas Eve, the dormant microservice reactivated 6 weeks prior, the siphon protocol mirroring board communications and investor term sheets to an external server, the garage, the filing cabinet, the retainer agreement with Zenith Capital Partners, the $187,000 in a hidden Chase account, and the email from Megan Holt with my mother's name in it. Priya was silent for 11 seconds. I counted. "Dom, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do not confront Ryan. Do not confront your mother. Do not call Megan. Do not change your behavior in any way. When you walk downstairs this morning, you smile at your husband and you ask him how his coffee is. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Good, because what you just described to me is not a divorce. It is a coordinated financial conspiracy involving your spouse, a former colleague with insider access to your company, and possibly your own mother. If we move too early, they scatter. They destroy evidence. They lawyer up individually and point fingers at each other, and you spend 3 years in litigation chasing shadows." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles ached. "So what do? We build a case so airtight that when we walk into that courtroom, they do not just lose, they cannot breathe. I'm going to refer you to a forensic accountant named Marcus Chen, former FBI Financial Crimes Unit. He is expensive, but he is the best in Northern California. He will trace every dollar, every wire, every shell company transaction back to its source. While he does that, I need you to keep documenting everything. Dates, times, screenshots, conversations. You are a software engineer, Dom. Think of this like debugging. You do not patch the error the moment you find it. You trace it all the way back to the root." That metaphor landed in my chest like a fist. "How long?" I asked. 6 to 9 months, maybe longer." 9 months. I looked at my father's photograph in the drawer. His smile, his steady eyes. "I can wait," I said. I know you can, Priya said. That is why I gave you my card. Priya called it the Corporate Protection Agreement. Ryan called it his idea. That was the beauty of it. 3 weeks after my call to Priya, in the middle of January, Ryan came home from work with a bottle of Cayman Cabernet and a speech he had clearly rehearsed in the car. Dom, I have been thinking. Your company is growing fast, 19 states, investors circling. If something ever happened to us, God forbid, we need to protect what you have built. What we have built. He said we, like he had written a single line of code. Like he had spent a single night debugging server crashes at 3 in the morning while he slept in Egyptian cotton sheets 1 floor above me. I talked to Jeffrey about it, he continued. He thinks we should do a post-nuptial agreement, something that clearly defines what is yours and what is ours. It protects both of us. I poured myself a glass of the Cabernet. Let the silence sit for 5 seconds. Then I said, that actually makes sense. Ryan blinked. He had expected resistance. I could see it in the way his shoulders dropped half an inch, the tension leaving his jaw like air from a tire. He had prepared counterarguments. He had prepared charm. He had not prepared for agreement. What Ryan did not know was that Priya had predicted this exact move 11 days earlier. He will suggest a post-nup, she told me over the phone. Men like Ryan always do. They frame it as protection. But the real purpose is to establish a legal baseline for the asset split they are already planning. When he brings it up, say yes immediately. Do not negotiate. Do not ask questions. Let him think he is steering the ship. And then, I asked, and then we make sure the agreement contains a clause that buries him. Section 7. On the surface, the Corporate Protection Agreement was 12 pages of standard financial language. Asset definitions, income classifications, intellectual property assignments, dissolution procedures. Jeffrey Banks drafted it himself. The same silver-haired man who would later stand beside Ryan in that October courtroom called it airtight. But Priya had spent 9 days working with a trust attorney named Helen Zhao to engineer Section 7. It read, in language so dense it could tranquilize a law professor, that any assets transferred into an irrevocable trust established prior to or during the marriage for the explicit purpose of corporate protection shall be deemed separate property and exempt from community property division under California Family Code. In plain English, if I moved Lumen's equity into a trust, Ryan could never touch it. The week before signing, I did exactly that. Priya introduced me to Helen, who established the Mitchell Legacy Trust, an irrevocable entity that now held 100% of my shares in Lumen Technologies. The trust's stated purpose was corporate protection and educational mission continuity. Its beneficiaries were the platform's scholarship fund and eventually my future children. Not Ryan, not Gloria, not anyone who had ever looked at my life's work and seen a number instead of a purpose. Ryan signed the agreement on a Wednesday evening at our dining room table. He used a Mont Blanc pen. He smiled at me across the table like a man who had just locked the vault door with himself inside, not realizing the vault was already empty. "This is the smart move, babe," he said. "I know," I said. I signed my name next to his. Priya notarized it the following morning. That night, I stood in my office and looked at my father's photograph. His eyes, his quiet certainty. Every system has a vulnerability, Dad. I just found his. My brother Deshaun called me on a Sunday afternoon in early February. I was in my office reviewing the forensic audit timeline Marcus Chen had started building. 3 weeks into the investigation, Marcus had already mapped 11 transactions flowing through Zenith Capital Partners, but the money trail kept dead-ending at a secondary account he could not crack. "Dom, I need to talk to you about something." Deshaun's voice had that texture it gets when he has been drinking. Not slurred, just softer, like the edges of his consonants had been sanded down by bourbon. "What is it?" "Can you come to the restaurant? Not tomorrow, today." Deshaun owned a barbecue place in Oakland called Mitchell's Smoke and Soul. He opened it 4 years ago with a small business loan and $70,000 I had given him from my Series A raise. He never called it a loan. I never called it a gift. We just never talked about it, which was how the Mitchell family handled most things that mattered. I drove across the Bay Bridge with the windows down. February in the Bay Area is not winter the way the rest of the country understands winter. It was 58 degrees. The sky was the color of brushed aluminum. Alcatraz sat in the water like a fist. Deshaun was alone in the restaurant, chairs stacked on tables, the smoker cold. He was sitting at the bar with a glass of Hennessy and a brown envelope. "Before I show you this," he said, "I need you to know I did not understand what it was when I signed it." My stomach dropped. "Signed what?" He slid the envelope across the bar. Inside was a single document, a personal guarantee co-signed by Deshaun Mitchell and Gloria Mitchell, pledging our mother's house in Oakland as collateral for a $75,000 line of credit issued by Pacific West Credit Union. The borrower listed on the document was Zenith Capital Partners. "Ryan came to me in November," Deshaun said. He was not looking at me. He was looking at the Hennessy. Said Mom was in trouble. Gambling debts. Said if I co-signed this, he could restructure her debt through some investment company and make it go away. He said you knew about it. He said you asked him to handle it quietly because you did not want it to affect Lumine's investor optics. Every sentence was a knife, not because they were cruel, but because they were calculated. Ryan had weaponized my brother's love for our mother and my brother's insecurity about money against both of us simultaneously. "Deshaun, I never asked Ryan to do anything." He finally looked at me. His eyes were red. Not from the Hennessy. From something deeper. "I know," he said. "I figured that out 3 days ago when Mom called me crying, asking why the credit union sent a collections notice to her house. Dom, they already drew down $42,000 on that line. The routing number on the draw goes straight to an account I do not recognize." I took out my phone and opened the encrypted file where I kept every piece of evidence I had gathered since Christmas Eve. "Read me the routing number," I said. He read it. 9 digits. I checked them against the secondary account Marcus had been unable to trace. They matched. The dead end was my brother's signature. I sat on that bar stool in my brother's empty restaurant and felt the floor tilt beneath me. Not because the evidence surprised me. By now, I had learned that Ryan's schemes had roots in every corner of my life. But because Deshaun, my loud, stubborn, prideful little brother, was sitting across from me with tears running down his face, and I could not tell him it was going to be okay. Because I did not know yet if it was. The tech world found out about my divorce before I was ready. It was the second week of March. I was scheduled to keynote at Future Build, a 3-day education technology conference at the Moscone Center in San Francisco. 1,200 attendees, investors, district superintendents, edtech founders, journalists. Lumen was announcing a partnership with the California Department of Education that would bring our AI reading platform to every Title I school in the state. 18 months of negotiations compressed into a 15-minute presentation. I had rehearsed it 40 times. I never got to slide 4. The first 3 minutes went perfectly. I walked on stage in a black Roland Mouret dress, wireless mic clipped to my collar, and opened with a video of a 9-year-old girl in Fresno reading her first chapter book out loud. The audience was silent. The good kind of silent. The kind where 1,200 people hold their breath at the same time. Then my phone buzzed in the pocket of my dress. Then it buzzed again. Then it did not stop. On the screens behind me, my presentation vanished. In its place was a web page. Bold headline, black text on white, designed to look like a news article. The title read, Lumen Technologies CEO, Dominique Mitchell faces fraud investigation amid bitter divorce. Someone in the audience gasped, then murmuring, then the sound of 1,200 phones lighting up at once. The article was fake. Every word of it. It claimed I had misappropriated investor funds, inflated user metrics, and was under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission. It cited anonymous sources. It included a photograph of me leaving a law office, which was real, taken without my knowledge, probably by someone Ryan had hired. I stood on that stage for 9 seconds without speaking. 9 seconds is an eternity when 1,200 people are staring at you and your entire professional reputation is dissolving on a screen behind your head. I looked at the front row. Priya was there. She gave me one small nod. I turned back to the audience. "My name is Dominique Mitchell," I said. "That article is false. Every claim in it is fabricated. I am currently involved in a private legal matter, which someone has decided to weaponize in the most public way possible. I will not dignify it with a detailed response right now, because I came here today to talk about something that actually matters." I clicked my clicker. The fake article disappeared. Slide 4 appeared. A map of California with 1,100 Title I schools highlighted in gold. "This is what matters," I said. 1,100 schools, 340,000 children who cannot read at grade level. That is why I built Lumen. That is why I'm standing here, and no fake article, no coward hiding behind a screen, and no amount of personal sabotage will change that. The applause started in the back row and rolled forward like a wave. I finished the presentation, all 15 minutes. My voice did not crack once. Afterward, in a bathroom stall backstage, I sat on the lid of a toilet and shook for 12 minutes. Priya stood outside the door and said nothing. She did not need to. She just stood there, and that was enough. Marcus called that evening. He had traced the fake article to a burner domain registered through a VPN. But the payment for the domain hosting came from a prepaid Visa card purchased at a Walgreens in the financial district, 3 blocks from Callaway Capital. Not proof. Not yet. But close enough to smell. Ryan was escalating, and he had no idea that every move he made was another line in the document I would eventually hand to a judge. I came home on a Thursday evening in late March to find the penthouse empty. Not empty the way a room looks when someone has gone out for dinner. Empty the way a body looks after the soul leaves. Furniture gone, bookshelves bare. The Italian leather sectional Ryan had insisted we buy from Roche-Beaubois, the one that cost more than my first car, vanished. The walnut dining table where he signed the corporate protection agreement with his Mont Blanc pen, gone. The kitchen had been stripped of everything that was not bolted down. The La Marzocco espresso machine. The copper pots from Williams-Sonoma. Even the hand towels. He took the hand towels. I walked through every room like a detective at a crime scene. Bedroom. The California King was still there, but the sheets were gone. The closet on his side was empty. Hangers swaying like small metal skeletons. Bathroom. His Creed Aventus, his electric toothbrush, his monogrammed robe, all gone. Guest room, stripped to the carpet. Then I reached the living room and I stopped breathing. The piano was gone, not Ryan's piano. Mine. A 1952 Steinway Model M in ebony satin that my father bought at an estate sale in Oakland when I was 7 years old. He paid $4,000 for it, which was every dollar in his savings account at the time. He drove it home in a rented U-Haul and carried it up 3 flights of stairs with 2 men from his church. That piano was where I learned to play Clair de Lune at age 9. It was where I sat the night my father died and played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat until my fingers went numb. It was the only possession I brought into this marriage that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with who I was before the world decided I was worth $15 million. Ryan knew that. He knew exactly what that piano meant, and he took it anyway. I called Priya. She answered on the first ring. "He cleaned out the penthouse," I said. My voice was flat, not calm. Flat. There is a difference. Calm is a choice. Flat is what happens when your body shuts down everything except the parts that keep you standing. What did he take? Everything. Furniture, appliances, clothes. I paused. And my father's piano. Silence. Then Priya said something I had never heard her say before. That was a mistake. Why? Because under California law, Items of personal property removed from a shared residence during a pending dissolution can be classified as spoliation of marital assets. But your father's piano is not a marital asset. It is separate property. He just committed conversion, which is civil theft. And he did it while a forensic accountant is documenting every move he makes. She let that settle. Dom, I know it does not feel like it right now, but he just handed us another weapon. Every item he took, I will get appraised. Every piece of furniture becomes a line item in our filing. And the piano becomes Exhibit A in demonstrating his pattern of malicious conduct. I sat on the bare floor of the living room where the Steinway used to stand. The hardwood had a rectangular shadow where the legs had blocked the sun for 3 years. A ghost of the thing I loved most. Get it back, Priya, I said. I will get you more than that, she said. That night I slept on the bare mattress in the bedroom. No sheets, no pillows. The fog pressed against the windows like it wanted in. I lay on my back and hummed Claire de Lune from memory, every note, until I fell asleep. The piano was gone. But the music was still mine. The attack came on a Monday morning in the first week of April. I was at the Lumen office in Soma, standing at the whiteboard in the engineering bay with my lead developer, a 26-year-old named Jalen who had been with me since the beta. We were mapping the architecture for the California Title I integration when every screen in the room turned red. Not metaphorically red, literally red. Every monitor, every laptop, every display on the wall flashed a solid crimson screen with white text scrolling across it. The text read, "Your data belongs to us now." Jalen's fingers froze above his keyboard. "That is not a test," he said. "No," I said. "It is not." Within 90 seconds, our entire system went dark. Lumen's student-facing platform, the teacher dashboard, the back-end analytics engine, the administrative portal, 430,000 active student accounts across 19 states went offline simultaneously. A distributed denial-of-service flood had overwhelmed our servers, while a secondary intrusion exploited a vulnerability in the same dormant microservice I had discovered on Christmas Eve. The same microservice, the same entry point. Someone had not just found the door I had locked. They had made a copy of the key before I changed it. I called Marcus Chen from the server room while Jalen and 2 other engineers worked to isolate the breach. "Marcus, Lumen is under attack. A distributed denial-of-service flood plus a targeted intrusion through the beta microservice. Whoever did this had inside knowledge of our architecture." Marcus was quiet for 3 seconds. "Dom, I need you to check something. Pull the access logs for that microservice from the last 72 hours. Look for any authentication using credentials that were deactivated more than 12 months ago." I pulled the logs. There it was. An authentication event at 2:17 in the morning using the developer credentials of a former employee. Someone who had left Lumen 14 months ago. Someone whose access should have been revoked the day she walked out the door. Megan Holt, my former colleague at Google, the woman I personally recruited to Lumen 2 years into our growth and made head of platform security. The woman who resigned 14 months ago citing burnout, whom I wished well without a single suspicion. Her credentials had never been deactivated. An oversight in our offboarding process. A single, unchecked box in an HR system that Megan herself had helped design when she built our entire security infrastructure. She had left a back door in the house she helped build. "Marcus," I said, "it is Megan." "I know," he said. "I have been watching her digital footprint for 6 weeks. She registered a new LLC in Nevada 3 months ago. Guess who the silent investor is?" I did not need to guess. "The LLC is called Meridian Consulting Group," Marcus continued. "It shares a registered agent with Zenith Capital Partners. Same post office box in Reno, same signatory. Your husband has been funding Megan Holt's operations since at least October of last year. October. 1 month before he reactivated the microservice. 1 month before he approached Deshawn. Ryan had not just planned this. He had built an entire infrastructure of betrayal, company by company, person by person, like a man constructing a building designed to collapse on top of me. I stood in the server room surrounded by blinking red lights and the hum of machines fighting to stay alive. My platform, my mission. 430,000 children who relied on Lumen to help them read. All of it hanging by a thread because the man I married had turned the woman I once trusted into a weapon. We contained the breach in 4 hours. Jalen rebuilt the firewall. I personally revoked every legacy credential in the system, all 312 of them, one by one, but the damage was done. 16 school districts reported outages. 3 investors called asking questions. The California Department of Education sent a formal inquiry. Ryan was not just trying to take my money anymore. He was trying to burn my life's work to the ground. The data leak appeared online 48 hours after the hack. Someone had taken fragments of Lumen's internal documents, board meeting minutes, revenue projections, investor communications, and scattered them across 3 anonymous forums and a Medium article published under the name EdTech Truth. The article was titled, "Inside Lumen Technologies, Inflated Metrics, Mismanaged Funds, and a CEO Who Cannot Be Trusted." It was a more sophisticated version of the fake article from Future Build. This time, the lies were wrapped around grains of truth. Real revenue numbers, slightly distorted, actual board discussions, taken out of context, genuine investor emails, edited to change their meaning. Priya called an emergency meeting at her office on Market Street. Marcus was there, so was Helen Zhao. "This changes things," Priya said. She was standing at the head of a glass conference table, arms crossed, jaw tight. I had never seen her look angry before. Focused, yes. Strategic, always. But this was anger. "They have crossed a line from civil misconduct into criminal territory. Unauthorized access to proprietary corporate data, distribution of stolen trade secrets, securities fraud if any of this leaked information affects your stock valuation or investor commitments." Marcus pulled up a timeline on his laptop. "I have traced the data exfiltration to the same breach window from Monday. The files were copied during the 4 hours the intrusion was active. They were routed through Megan Holt's Nevada LLC, then uploaded to the forums from a VPN node in Romania. But the Medium article was written from a device registered to an IP address in Pacific Heights. Pacific Heights, where Ryan had been staying since he cleaned out the penthouse, a rental condo on Broadway Street that I later learned was leased under Zenith Capital Partners. "Can we prove Ryan wrote the article?" I asked. "Not yet," Marcus said. "But I can prove the device that published it is connected to the same network as his condo's Wi-Fi. I can prove the Medium account was created using a Proton mail address that shares a recovery phone number with a prepaid cell purchased at the same Walgreens where the Future Build domain payment originated. Same Walgreens, same Visa card, same pattern. Ryan was smart, but he was arrogant. And arrogance makes you sloppy because you stop believing anyone is watching." Helen Zhao spoke for the first time. "Dom, I need to flag something from a trust perspective. If these leaks cause material damage to Lumen's valuation, it could affect the Mitchell Legacy Trust. The trust owns 100% of your equity. Any devaluation is a direct attack on the trust's assets, not just your personal interests. That gives us standing to pursue damages not only in family court, but in civil court, and potentially refer the matter to federal authorities." I looked at Priya. She nodded. "How many fronts are we fighting on now?" I asked. Priya held up her hand and counted on her fingers. Divorce, asset theft, corporate espionage, securities manipulation, civil conversion for the piano and furniture, and now potential federal cybercrime charges. 6 fronts. My husband had opened a 6-front war against me, and he still came home every night to a condo 3 miles from our penthouse, believing he was winning. "When do we strike?" I asked. Priya uncrossed her arms. "Not yet. We let him keep building his own coffin. Every leak, every hack, every stolen document is another nail. When we walk into that courtroom, I do not want him to lose, Dom. I want him to be buried." I drove home that night through the fog on Van Ness Avenue. The city lights bled orange and white through the mist. I thought about my father's piano. I thought about the 9-year-old girl in Fresno reading her first chapter book. I thought about 430,000 children logging onto a platform that someone was trying to destroy. And I thought, not yet. But soon, my mother came to the penthouse on a Saturday in mid-April. She did not call first. She never did. Gloria Mitchell believed that mothers had a God-given right to show up unannounced, and that any daughter who disagreed was being dramatic. She stood in the doorway and looked at the empty living room. No furniture, no art on the walls, no piano. "What happened here?" she asked. "Ryan took everything," I said. "But you already knew that." She walked past me into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator like she was looking for something specific, closed it, sat down at the folding table I had bought from Target to replace the walnut dining set that Ryan had stolen. "Dominique, I need to talk to you about something." "The line of credit," I said. Her head snapped up. For a fraction of a second, I saw it. Not guilt, fear. The kind of fear that lives in the back of a person's eyes when they have been caught doing something they convinced themselves was not that bad. "Deshawn told you." "Deshawn told me." Marcus confirmed it. "I have seen the documents, Mom. I have seen your signature. I have seen the draws. $42,000 from a $75,000 line of credit, collateralized against your house, funneled into a shell company controlled by my husband." Gloria pressed her palms flat on the folding table. Her rings clicked against the plastic surface. Costume jewelry. She had pawned her real rings years ago. I knew that now. Marcus had found the pawn shop records in a database search. 3 rings, 2 bracelets, a gold chain my father gave her on their 20th anniversary. Total pawn value, $6,800. All of it fed into a gambling habit she had hidden from everyone for 7 years. "It is not what you think," she said. "Then tell me what it is." Ryan said he could help me. I owed money to people, Dominique. Not the kind of people you can make a payment plan with. He said if I signed the guarantee, he would clear my debts. He said the money from the credit line would go into an investment account and I would be free within a year. And what did he ask for in return? She looked at the folding table, at her costume rings, at anything that was not my face. He asked me to sign a few documents for his company. He said it was just administrative. He said you knew. There it was again. The same lie he told Deshawn. You knew. Dominique knows. Your daughter is fine with it. Ryan had turned my own name into a key that unlocked my family's trust, one person at a time. Mom, the company you signed for is a shell corporation. It is under federal investigation. Your name is on the registered agent filing. Do you understand what that means? It means that legally, you are responsible for every transaction that flows through it. The color left her face like water draining from a tub. Slow, visible, complete. I did not know, she whispered. I believe you, I said. And I did. My mother was many things. Proud, stubborn, addicted to slot machines and scratch-offs, and the fantasy that the next pull would fix everything. But she was not a criminal. She was a woman drowning in debt who grabbed the first hand that reached down, not realizing it belonged to the man who was trying to drown her daughter. Can you fix it? She asked. I looked at my mother sitting at a Target folding table in my empty penthouse, wearing fake rings, asking her daughter to save her from the consequences of trusting the wrong man. I do not know yet, Mom, I said, but I am going to try. She cried. I did not. Someone had to hold the ceiling up, and it had always been me. The deposition took place on a Tuesday morning in early May at the law offices of Jeffrey Banks on California Street. Neutral ground, or at least that is what Banks called it. There was nothing neutral about a room where my husband planned to lie under oath. Priya and I arrived at 8:45. She wore a charcoal suit and carried a single leather binder. No laptop, no stacks of paper, just the binder. Why so light? I asked in the elevator. Because today is not about what we show, it is about what he says. Every word Ryan speaks under oath becomes a locked door he can never reopen. Our job is to let him lock as many doors as possible. The conference room was long and narrow with a mahogany table that smelled like furniture polish and old money. Ryan was already seated at the far end, flanked by Jeffrey Banks and a paralegal whose name I never learned. He was wearing a slate gray Tom Ford suit. His hair was freshly cut. He looked like a man auditioning for the role of wronged husband. He did not look at me when I walked in. That was intentional. Ryan never did anything without calculating its effect. Not looking at me was supposed to communicate indifference. What it actually communicated was fear dressed up as composure. The court reporter set up her stenotype machine. Priya placed her binder on the table, unopened. The videographer pressed record. Banks led the questioning for the first 40 minutes. Softball after softball. When did the marriage begin to deteriorate? Had I been emotionally absent due to work? Had I excluded Ryan from financial decisions? Ryan answered each question with the polished cadence of a man who had rehearsed in front of a mirror. "My wife is a brilliant woman," he said at one point, almost smiling. "But she chose her company over our marriage. I supported her for 6 years. I sacrificed career opportunities to accommodate her schedule. All I am asking for is a fair division of what we built together." What we built together. The same phrase from the night he proposed the corporate protection agreement. The same lie, recycled and repackaged for a legal audience. Then it was Priya's turn. She opened her binder for the first time. Inside was a single sheet of paper with five questions written in black ink. She did not look at Ryan. She looked at the court reporter. "Mr. Calloway, do you have any financial interest, direct or indirect, in any entity other than Calloway Capital?" Ryan's jaw tightened by a millimeter. "No." "Have you at any time directed funds from any source to any entity in which a member of Ms. Mitchell's family serves as an officer or registered agent?" "No." "Do you have any personal or professional relationship with a former Lumen Technologies employee named Megan Holt?" The room changed temperature. I felt it in my wrists. "I know who she is," Ryan said carefully. "She was at our wedding, but no, I have no professional relationship with her." "Have you at any time authorized, funded, or facilitated any attempt to access Lumen Technologies' proprietary systems or data?" "Absolutely not." His voice was harder now, defensive. The polish was cracking. Priya looked at him for the first time. "Mr. Calloway, are you aware that providing false testimony under oath in a sworn deposition constitutes perjury under California Penal Code Section 118, punishable by up to 4 years in state prison?" Jeffrey Banks leaned forward. "Objection. Counsel is intimidating the witness." Priya closed her binder. "I have no further questions." 5 questions. 4 lies. 1 warning. And every word captured on video. In the elevator afterward, Priya held the binder against her chest and said, "He just handed us the shovel. Now we wait for him to finish digging." Marcus Chen spread the documents across Priya's conference table like a surgeon laying out instruments before an operation. It was the 3rd week of May. Outside the window, the Bay Bridge was disappearing into a wall of afternoon fog. Inside, the truth was finally visible. "I have been doing this for 11 years, Marcus said. 6 at the FBI, 5 in private practice. I have traced cartel money through 17 shell companies in 4 countries. I have unwound Ponzi schemes that took federal prosecutors a decade to build case around." He looked at me. "I have never seen anything this arrogant." He tapped the first document, a flowchart printed on oversized paper, color-coded in red, blue, and green. At the top was Ryan Calloway. At the bottom was a web of accounts, entities, and transactions that looked like the root system of a poison tree. "It starts with Calloway Capital," Marcus said. "Your husband's hedge fund manages approximately $43 million in client assets. Legitimate mostly. But 18 months ago, he opened a side account at a brokerage in the Cayman Islands under the name Trident Offshore Holdings. He seeded it with $210,000 wired from Zenith Capital Partners." "Where did Zenith get the money?" Priya asked. 3 sources. Marcus held up one finger. First, the retainer payments. $15,000 a month from the hidden Chase account, totaling $165,000 over 11 months. The remaining $22,000 in the account came from Gloria Mitchell's line of credit draws, routed through Deshawn's co-signed guarantee at Pacific West Credit Union. There it was, the $22,000 discrepancy I had noticed months ago. Not a mystery, a trail. My mother's gambling debt turned into seed money for my husband's offshore account. Marcus held up a second finger. Second, Meridian Consulting Group, Megan Holtz, Nevada, LLC. It invoiced Zenith Capital Partners for quote-unquote technology consulting services. 11 invoices over 9 months, totaling $142,000. Not a single deliverable, not a single report, not a single email confirming any work performed. Classic pass-through laundering. And the third source? I asked. Marcus paused. He looked at Priya. She nodded. The third source is Lumen Technologies. My blood stopped moving. During the 4-hour breach window on April 7th, Megan Holt did not just steal data. She initiated a wire transfer from Lumen's operating account to a holding account at First Republic Bank. $97,000. The transfer was disguised as a vendor payment to a company called Pinnacle Digital Solutions, which does not exist. The money sat in the holding account for 72 hours, then moved to Trident Offshore in the Caymans. $97,000, stolen directly from my company while my engineers were fighting to keep the platform alive. Total amount funneled through all channels to Trident Offshore, Marcus said, tapping the bottom of the flowchart where every line converged into a single red circle. $404,000, all of it traceable, all of it documented, and all of it ending in an offshore account controlled by Ryan Calloway. The room was silent for a long time. What do we do with this? I asked. Priya stood up and walked to the window. The fog had swallowed the bridge completely now. Only the cable towers were visible, rising from the white like the masts of a sinking ship. We have 2 options, she said. Option 1, we present this in family court and use it to destroy his divorce claim. Option 2, we refer the entire package to the United States Attorney's Office for the Northern District of California and let the federal government prosecute him for wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. She turned to me. I recommend both. I looked at the flowchart. Every line, every dollar, every betrayal mapped in red, blue, and green on a piece of paper the size of a kitchen table. Both, I said. Deshawn showed up at the penthouse on a Friday evening in late May without calling first. The Mitchell family tradition of unannounced arrivals, apparently hereditary. He stood in the doorway holding a bottle of Hennessy and a manila envelope. His eyes were bloodshot. His chef's coat was still on, grease-stained at the collar, which meant he had come straight from the restaurant without going home first. That was how I knew it was serious. Deshawn was vain about his appearance. Showing up unwashed meant something inside him had broken loose. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Since when do you ask?" He did not smile. He walked past me into the empty living room, looked at the bare floor where the piano used to be, and sat down against the wall with his knees pulled up like a kid hiding from a thunderstorm. I sat across from him. 2 siblings on a hardwood floor in an empty penthouse, about to have the conversation we had been avoiding our entire lives. "I lied to you," he said. "About what? About Ryan? About when it started? About what I knew?" He unscrewed the Hennessy and took a long pull straight from the bottle. Ryan did not come to me in November. He came to me in September, 2 months earlier than I told you, and he did not just ask me to co-sign the guarantee. My chest tightened. What else? He paid me. Deshawn's voice cracked on the word. Not dramatic, quiet, like a bridge failing under too much weight. $20,000, cash. He said it was a consulting fee for helping him quote-unquote restructure Mom's debt. I knew it was not real consulting. I knew there was no restructuring plan. But I took the money anyway because the restaurant was 3 months behind on rent and my small business loan was in default and I was too proud to ask you for help again. The $70,000. the money I had given him from my Series A. He had spent it, the restaurant had eaten it, and instead of coming to me, he went to the man who was trying to destroy me. Dom, I am sorry. He was looking at the floor, at the rectangular shadow where the Steinway used to stand. I told myself it was not a big deal. I told myself Ryan was family and family helps family, and I was not hurting anyone. But then the credit union sent the collections notice to Mom's house, and I started reading the guarantee I signed, and I realized I had put her home on the line for a company that does not do anything. Zenith Capital Partners, I said. Yeah. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. And then you showed me that the routing number matched, and I knew I had not just made a mistake. I had helped him build the machine that was aimed at you. I wanted to be angry. Part of me was. The part that had spent 6 months building a fortress around everything I loved while my own brother was handing the enemy bricks. But there was another part. The part that remembered Deshawn at 14, standing in front of our father's casket in a suit 2 sizes too big, trying not to cry because I was not crying, and he thought that meant he was not allowed to either. He had always followed my lead, even when it led him off a cliff. Deshawn, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to testify, in court, under oath, about the $20,000, about the timeline, about everything Ryan said to you and everything you signed. He looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded. Will it fix what I did? No, I said. But it will help fix what he did. He stayed until midnight. We sat on that empty floor and drank Hennessy and did not talk about the case. We talked about Dad, about the piano, about the time Deshawn burned Thanksgiving turkey so badly the fire department came and Dad laughed so hard he cried. For the first time in 6 months, my apartment did not feel empty. The morning of October 7th, I woke up at 4:32, not because of an alarm, because my body knew what day it was. I lay in bed for 11 minutes listening to the foghorns on the bay. 2 long blasts. Silence. 2 more. The sound of a city breathing in the dark. I showered. I dried my hair. I put on a navy blue Stella McCartney suit that Priya had helped me choose 3 weeks earlier. Nothing flashy, she said. Nothing designer that screams money. Clean lines, quiet authority. You want the judge to see a woman who built something, not a woman who bought something. I drank black coffee standing at the kitchen counter. No sugar, no milk. The penthouse was still mostly empty. I had bought a bed, a desk, a coffee maker, the essentials of a woman at war. At 7:15, I drove to Priya's office on Market Street. Marcus was already there, sitting at the conference table with 2 banker's boxes of documents and a flash drive containing 412 pages of financial records, forensic analysis, and transaction maps. Helen Zhao was reviewing the trust documents one final time. Priya was standing at the window, looking out at the city, holding a cup of tea she had not touched. Are we ready? I asked. Priya turned around. We have been ready since December. Today is just the day the world finds out. We arrived at San Francisco Superior Court at 8:45. The building sat on McAllister Street like a gray monument to every promise that was ever broken and every debt that was ever settled. I had driven past it 100 times and never once looked up. Now I was walking through its doors with everything I owned on the line. Courtroom 12, 3rd floor, Judge Raymond Torres presiding. The gallery was half full. I saw faces I recognized. 2 of my investors sitting in the back row with expressions that said they were there to protect their money, not me. A reporter from TechCrunch who had been following the Future Build story. 3 women I did not know, sitting together, who I later learned had driven up from Fresno because their children used Lumen and they wanted to see the woman who built it. I sat at the left table with Priya and Helen. Across the aisle, Ryan sat with Jeffrey Banks and a second attorney I had not seen before, a young woman with a legal pad full of notes and the nervous energy of someone who knew she was on the wrong side of history. Ryan was wearing the same slate gray Tom Ford suit from the deposition, same haircut, same posture, Same manufactured calm. But something was different. His left hand was resting on the table, and his index finger was tapping. A tiny, rapid, involuntary rhythm. The metronome of a man whose confidence was running on fumes. Judge Torres entered at 9 o'clock sharp. The bailiff called the room to order. Torres settled into his chair, adjusted his glasses, and looked at both tables with the tired patience of a man who had seen too many marriages die in his courtroom. Before we begin, Torres said, I want to make something clear. This is a dissolution proceeding with contested asset division. I have reviewed the preliminary filings from both parties. I have reviewed the financial disclosures. And I have received under seal a supplementary evidence package submitted by petitioner's counsel. He looked at Priya. Ms. Kapoor, I trust there will be no surprises outside the scope of this sealed submission. No surprises, Your Honor, Priya said. Only the truth. Torres nodded. Then let us proceed. Mr. Banks, your client filed the initial motion for division of community property. You may present your case. Jeffrey Banks stood up, buttoned his jacket, and began to dismantle my life with the confidence of a man who had no idea what was coming. Jeffrey Banks was good. I had to give him that. He stood before Judge Torres with the easy authority of a man who had won more cases than he had lost, and he painted a portrait of my marriage that was almost beautiful in its dishonesty. Your Honor, my client Ryan Calloway is a Harvard-educated financial professional who supported his wife's entrepreneurial ambitions for 6 years. He relocated his career. He restructured his client portfolio to accommodate her travel schedule. He served as an unofficial advisor to Lumen Technologies during its early stages, offering financial guidance and strategic counsel without compensation. Banks paced slowly in front of the bench, hands clasped behind his back. During this marriage, Ms. Mitchell's company grew from a startup operating out of a co-working space to a technology platform valued at $15 million. Mr. Calloway contributed to that growth through emotional support, professional sacrifice, and the stability of a committed partnership. Under California community property law, he is entitled to an equitable share of the marital estate, including any appreciation in the value of Lumen Technologies that occurred during the marriage. He turned to the judge with the timing of a man who had rehearsed this next line in the shower. My client is not asking for anything unreasonable, Your Honor. He is asking for what the law provides. 50% of the community estate, nothing more, nothing less. Ryan sat motionless behind him. His finger had stopped tapping. He was watching Banks the way a patient watches a surgeon. Total surrender to the hands of someone he believed could save him. Banks called his first witness, a financial analyst named Dr. Patricia Langford, hired by Ryan's legal team to assess Lumen's valuation. She was precise and credentialed, and she spoke with the calm monotone of an expert witness who charged $800 an hour and was worth every penny to the man paying her. In my professional opinion, Dr. Langford said, Lumen Technologies has a current fair market value of approximately $15.2 million. This valuation accounts for recurring revenue, user growth metrics, intellectual property, and the recently announced partnership with the California Department of Education. And in your opinion, Banks said, what portion of this value was generated during the marriage? Substantially all of it. Ms. Mitchell founded the company approximately 6 years ago, shortly after the marriage began. Virtually all material growth, funding rounds, and revenue milestones occurred within the marital period. Banks smiled, not at the judge, at me. A thin professional smile that said, this is mathematics, not emotion, and mathematics does not care about your feelings. Then he called Ryan to the stand. Ryan walked to the witness box the way he walked into every room. Shoulders back, chin level. The posture of a man who had never been told no by anyone who mattered. Banks lobbed the questions like tennis balls at a practice wall. Tell us about your sacrifice. Tell us about your support. Tell us about the nights you waited while she worked. Ryan answered each one with warmth and humility so perfectly calibrated that I almost believed him myself. I love my wife, Ryan said, looking at the judge with steady eyes. I have always loved her, but love does not mean I should walk away with nothing after 6 years of building a life together. I watched the gallery. The investors were nodding. The TechCrunch reporter was typing. The three women from Fresno were not moving at all. They were watching me. Priya leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Let him finish. Let the judge hear every word. Let the record capture every lie." I looked at the binder on our table, still closed, still waiting. "Your Honor," Banks said, straightening his tie, "that concludes the respondent's presentation." Torres made a note. Then he looked at Priya. "Ms. Kapoor, you may present the petitioner's case." Priya stood up, buttoned her jacket, picked up the binder, and the room held its breath. Priya walked to the center of the courtroom the way a conductor walks to the podium. No rush, no hesitation. Every step measured like a woman who had spent 9 months waiting for this exact moment and refused to waste a single second of it. She placed the leather binder on the lectern, the same binder she had carried to the deposition in May, the same binder she had held against her chest in the elevator afterward when she told me Ryan was digging his own grave. It had traveled a long road to reach this lectern. So had I. She opened it and did something I did not expect. She ignored Ryan completely. "Your Honor, I would like to begin by entering into evidence the document previously submitted under seal. Exhibit A, the Corporate Protection Agreement, executed and notarized on January 15th of this year, signed voluntarily by both Dominique Mitchell and Ryan Calloway." The clerk handed a copy to Judge Torres. Jeffrey Banks received his copy at the same time. I watched his face as he opened it. His eyes moved down the first page with the casual confidence of a man who had already reviewed this document and dismissed it as standard financial housekeeping. He had not read page 9 carefully enough. "Your Honor," Priya continued, her voice steady as a surgical blade, "I direct your attention to Section 7 of this agreement, beginning on page 9. This section, agreed to and signed by Mr. Calloway without duress or coercion, states the following." She read it aloud, every word, not paraphrasing, not summarizing, reading the exact legal language into the court record so that it could never be misquoted, misinterpreted, or denied. "Any assets transferred into an irrevocable trust established prior to or during the marriage for the explicit purpose of corporate protection shall be deemed separate property and exempt from community property division under California Family Code." The words landed in the courtroom like stones dropped into still water. I could feel the ripples spreading outward. Torres read the section on his copy, then he read it again. He removed his glasses, cleaned them with the cloth he kept in his breast pocket, put them back on, and read it a third time. He looked up at Priya over the rim of his glasses. "Ms. Kapoor, are you asserting that the respondent's entire claim to Lumen Technologies is nullified by a clause in an agreement he himself signed?" "That is exactly what I am asserting, Your Honor." Banks was on his feet before Torres finished the sentence. "Objection. We were not informed of any irrevocable trust. The respondent's discovery responses made no mention of a trust entity. This is a deliberate..." "Exhibit B," Priya said. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She handed a second document to the clerk with the calm precision of a woman placing the final piece into a puzzle she had been building since December. "The Mitchell Legacy Trust, irrevocable. Established January 8th of this year, 7 days before the Corporate Protection Agreement was executed. This trust holds 100% of Ms. Mitchell's equity in Lumen Technologies. Its stated purpose is corporate protection and educational mission continuity. Its beneficiaries are the Lumen Scholarship Fund and Ms. Mitchell's future descendants, not Mr. Calloway." She paused to let that last sentence breathe. "The trust was established during the marriage, as explicitly permitted by Section 7 of the agreement Mr. Calloway signed. It was funded with shares that Ms. Mitchell held as sole founder, created from her own intellectual property prior to the marriage. And it was structured by Helen Zhao, a licensed trust attorney with 14 years of practice in full compliance with California Probate Code." Priya turned to face Banks directly for the first time. "The discovery responses were accurate, Mr. Banks. Ms. Mitchell holds 0 personal shares in Lumen Technologies. She disclosed that truthfully. The shares belong to the trust. And the trust, per the agreement your client signed with his own Mont Blanc pen at his own dining room table, is separate property. Banks was flipping through the corporate protection agreement with both hands, page after page, searching for the exit that did not exist. The young attorney beside him had stopped writing entirely. Her legal pad was still open, but her pen was motionless, suspended an inch above the paper, as if her hand had simply forgotten how to move. Ryan's face had not changed. Not yet. He was still wearing the mask. But beneath it, something was cracking. I could see it in the way his posture had shifted. His shoulders, which had been pressed back with manufactured confidence all morning, had dropped by a fraction of an inch. The same fraction I had noticed the night he proposed the postnuptial, and I agreed too quickly. He was beginning to understand. Torres set down the trust document. "Mr. Banks, I will hear your response." Banks straightened his tie, a reflexive gesture, the legal equivalent of adjusting your oxygen mask while the plane is going down. "Your Honor, my client was not aware that a trust had been established. The creation of this trust, in secret, with the express purpose of shielding assets from marital division, constitutes constructive fraud and a violation of the fiduciary duty between spouses. We request that the trust be voided and the assets returned to the community estate." Torres looked at Banks for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "Mr. Banks, your client signed an agreement that explicitly permits the creation of such a trust during the marriage. Are you arguing that your client, a Harvard-educated financial professional who manages $43 million in client assets, did not read the document he voluntarily signed?" Banks opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The silence between those movements was the loudest sound in the courtroom. "Your Honor, I would like to request a brief recess to confer with my client regarding—" "Denied," Torres said. "The court will not recess during active presentation of evidence. Continue, Ms. Kapoor." Priya nodded. She turned back to the judge and delivered the line I had watched her rehearse in her office 3 days earlier, standing at the window on Market Street, practicing it until every syllable carried the exact weight she intended. "Your Honor, with the Mitchell Legacy Trust in place and Section 7 of the Corporate Protection Agreement fully operative, there are no Lumen Technologies shares in the marital estate. The company's equity, intellectual property, patents, platform architecture, and revenue streams are held entirely within an irrevocable trust that is classified as separate property by both statutory definition and contractual agreement signed by the respondent himself." She paused, half a beat, just enough for the courtroom to hold its breath. "Mr. Calloway's claim to 50% of Lumen Technologies is, respectfully, a claim to 50% of zero." The courtroom shifted. Not a sound exactly, but a redistribution of weight, like an entire room leaning forward at the same time. The investors in the back row exchanged a glance. The TechCrunch reporter stopped typing and looked up from her laptop for the first time since the proceedings began. The 3 women from Fresno, the ones who had driven 4 hours because their children used Lumen, grabbed each other's hands. Ryan's index finger was tapping against the mahogany table again. Faster this time, a metronome accelerating toward a tempo no human hand could sustain. "But I am not finished, Your Honor," Priya said. The room went still. She reached into the second banker's box beside our table and lifted out a binder I had never seen her carry before. Not the slim leather one she had wielded like a rapier for the past 9 months. This one was thick, heavy, black, the kind of binder that takes half a year and a former FBI forensic accountant working 18-hour days to build. The kind of binder that does not just win a divorce case, the kind that ends careers, destroys reputations, sends people to prison. The petitioner would now like to present evidence of systematic financial fraud, coordinated corporate espionage, serial perjury, and multi-channel money laundering committed by the respondent, Ryan Calloway, over a period of approximately 18 months. She placed the binder on the lectern with a sound that echoed through the courtroom like a vault door closing. Jeffrey Banks turned white. Ryan's fingers stopped tapping. Judge Torres leaned forward. And Priya opened the binder. What came next turned the courtroom into a killing floor. Exhibit C, a forensic financial analysis prepared by Marcus Chen, formerly of the FBI Financial Crimes Unit, documenting a coordinated money laundering scheme operated by the respondent, Ryan Calloway. Through a network of shell companies, fraudulent invoices, and offshore accounts. She lifted the first tab, Zenith Capital Partners, a shell corporation registered in California with no employees, no office, no clients, and no legitimate business activity. Its sole function was to receive and redistribute funds. The registered agent on the filing is Gloria Mitchell, the petitioner's mother, who signed the documents without understanding their legal significance after being coerced by the respondent through exploitation of her personal financial vulnerabilities. I did not look at this gallery. I did not need to. I could feel the room tightening around Ryan like a fist. Over an 11-month period, Zenith received $187,000 from a hidden Chase bank account controlled by Mr. Calloway. Of this amount, $165,000 came from monthly retainer payments Mr. Calloway invoiced to himself through a fictitious consulting arrangement. The remaining $22,000 was siphoned from a $75,000 line of credit at Pacific West Credit Union, co-signed under duress by the petitioner's brother, Deshaun Mitchell, and collateralized against Gloria Mitchell's home in Oakland. Banks was scribbling furiously on his legal pad. The young attorney beside him had stopped writing entirely. She was staring at Priya the way you stare at an oncoming train. Exhibit D, Meridian Consulting Group. A Nevada LLC registered by Megan Holt, a former employee of Lumen Technologies who served as head of platform security. Ms. Holt invoiced Zenith Capital Partners for $142,000 in fabricated technology consulting services over 9 months. No deliverables, no work product, no correspondence confirming any services rendered, pure pass-through laundering. Priya turned a page. Exhibit E. On April 7th of this year, during a coordinated cyber attack on Lumen Technologies executed using Ms. Holt's never deactivated security credentials, a wire transfer of $97,000 was initiated from Lumen's operating account to a holding account at First Republic Bank. The transfer was disguised as a vendor payment to Pinnacle Digital Solutions, a company that does not exist. Within 72 hours, the funds were moved to Trident Offshore Holdings, a brokerage account in the Cayman Islands controlled by Mr. Calloway. Torres removed his glasses and set them on the bench. He was looking at Ryan now, not with anger, with something worse, recognition. The look of a man who had seen this kind of greed before and knew exactly what it cost. Exhibit F. Total funds funneled through all channels to the Trident Offshore account. $404,000. Every dollar traced, every transaction documented, every account identified. Priya closed the binder. She did not slam it. She set it down gently, the way you set down a loaded weapon after you have already fired every round. And finally, Your Honor, Exhibit G. She lifted a flash drive from the table and held it up. This drive contains video footage from the sworn deposition of Ryan Calloway, taken May 6th of this year at the offices of Jeffrey Banks. During that deposition, Mr. Calloway was asked 5 questions under oath. He denied any financial interest in entities outside Calloway Capital. He denied directing funds to entities involving Ms. Mitchell's family members. He denied any professional relationship with Megan Holt. And he denied any involvement in accessing Lumen systems or data. She placed the flash drive on the clerk's desk. 4 questions, 4 denials, 4 provable lies, 4 counts of perjury under California Penal Code Section 118. The courtroom was silent, not the polite silence of people waiting for the next speaker. The airless silence of a room that has just witnessed something irreversible. Ryan was no longer tapping. He was no longer performing. He was sitting in his Tom Ford suit with both hands flat on the table, staring at a point somewhere beyond the wall, beyond the building, beyond the reach of any lie he could construct to save himself. Banks stood up slowly. Your Honor, I would like to request a continuance to— Denied, Torres said. Sit down, Mr. Banks. Judge Torres sat in silence for a long time. Not the dramatic silence of a man performing for the courtroom. The real silence of a man weighing justice on a scale only he could see. He put his glasses back on. He opened the Corporate Protection Agreement to Section 7. He opened the Mitchell Legacy Trust. He opened Marcus Chen's forensic binder. He read. He turned pages. He made notes in the margin with a black pen. No one moved. No one coughed. The court reporter's fingers hovered above the stenotype keys like birds waiting for wind. After 11 minutes, Torres looked up. I have reviewed the evidence presented by both parties. I have reviewed the Corporate Protection Agreement, the Mitchell Legacy Trust, and the forensic financial analysis submitted by the petitioner. I have also reviewed the sealed supplementary evidence package, which includes additional documentation consistent with the exhibits presented today. He turned to Ryan. Mr. Calloway, I want to speak to you directly, though I caution you that anything you say in this courtroom may be used in subsequent proceedings. Ryan did not move. Jeffrey Banks placed a hand on his arm. Whether it was restraint or comfort, I could not tell. Section 7 of the Corporate Protection Agreement, which you signed voluntarily and without duress on January 15th, explicitly classifies assets held in an irrevocable trust for corporate protection purposes as separate property. The Mitchell Legacy Trust, established January 8th, meets every criterion outlined in that section. It was created during the marriage as permitted. It holds equity that originated as the petitioner's sole intellectual property. And its purposes, corporate protection and educational mission continuity, are consistent with the agreement's stated intent. Torres paused. Under California Family Code and the terms of the agreement you executed, the equity in Lumen Technologies is separate property. It is not part of the community estate. Your claim to 50% of Lumen Technologies is therefore denied. A sound moved through the gallery. Not a gasp, something lower. A collective exhale. The sound of a room releasing a breath it had been holding for an hour. Furthermore, Torres continued, and his voice dropped half a register, the evidence presented by petitioner's counsel raises serious concerns regarding financial fraud, money laundering, corporate espionage, and perjury. These are matters beyond the jurisdiction of this court, but well within the jurisdiction of federal authorities. He looked at Priya. Ms. Kapoor, has this evidence been referred to the appropriate agencies? Yes, Your Honor. A formal referral was submitted to the United States Attorney's Office for the Northern District of California 3 weeks ago. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has opened a preliminary inquiry. Torres nodded. He turned back to Ryan. Mr. Calloway, I am making a formal judicial referral of this matter to the FBI and the United States Attorney's Office. I am also ordering the immediate preservation of all financial records, digital communications, and corporate documents associated with Zenith Capital Partners, Meridian Consulting Group, Trident Offshore Holdings, and Callaway Capital. Banks stood up one more time. His voice was hoarse. Your Honor, my client's rights. Your client's rights are fully preserved, Mr. Banks. He will have every opportunity to defend himself in the appropriate venue, but this courtroom is not that venue. Not anymore. Torres made a final note. Then he looked at me. In 30 years on the bench, I imagine he had looked at thousands of petitioners. Angry ones, broken ones, vindictive ones. I do not know what he saw when he looked at me. But I hope he saw a woman who had done everything right, who had waited 9 months, who had documented every betrayal, absorbed every attack, and never once lost sight of why she built what she built. Ms. Mitchell, he said, this court finds in your favor on all contested matters. The dissolution is granted. The community estate, exclusive of the trust, will be divided according to standard California guidelines. You will retain full control of the Mitchell Legacy Trust and all assets therein. He struck the gavel once. This matter is concluded. Court is adjourned. The gavel sound echoed off the walls like a period at the end of a very long sentence. The hallway outside courtroom 12 smelled like floor wax and coffee from the vending machine near the elevators. Fluorescent lights, gray linoleum. The kind of hallway where the biggest moments of people's lives happen in the most ordinary spaces. I walked out first. Priya was beside me. Helen was behind us carrying the banker's boxes. Marcus had already left to coordinate with the FBI contact he had been working with for the past 3 weeks. Ryan came out second. Banks was talking to him in low, urgent tones. The young attorney was nowhere in sight. She had left during Torres's ruling. Smart woman. Ryan stopped walking when he saw me. Banks put a hand on his shoulder, but Ryan shrugged it off. He took 3 steps toward me and stopped. For a moment, we were just 2 people standing in a government hallway. A husband and a wife. Or what was left of those words after you drained them of everything that made them mean something. You planned this, he said. His voice was quiet, not defeated, not yet, bewildered, like a chess player who has just realized he lost the game 12 moves ago and spent the last hour playing a board that was already decided. No, Ryan, I said. You planned this. I just paid attention. His jaw worked. His eyes were glassy but dry. Ryan Calloway would not cry in a public hallway. He would not give me that. He would not give anyone that. I gave you 6 years, he said. You gave yourself 6 years of access to a woman you thought was too trusting to fight back. That is not a marriage. That is a long con. He stared at me. Then he said something I did not expect. Your mother called me. After the ruling. She is in the lobby. She wants to talk to you. I looked past Ryan toward the elevators. Through the narrow window in the stairwell door, I could see the lobby below. Gloria was sitting on a wooden bench near the metal detectors, clutching her purse with both hands, wearing the same costume jewelry and the same look of fear I had seen at the folding table in April. Priya touched my arm. You do not have to. I know, I said. I took the stairs. My heels echoed in the concrete stairwell. Each step felt like a paragraph in a story I was still writing. Gloria stood up when she saw me. Her eyes were swollen. Her lipstick was smeared at the corner where she had been pressing her lips together to keep from breaking apart. Dominique. Mom, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I did not know what he was doing. I did not understand what I signed. I was scared and I was ashamed, and I thought if I just kept quiet, it would all go away. I looked at her. My mother, 58 years old, standing in the lobby of a courthouse in costume jewelry and borrowed dignity, asking for forgiveness from the daughter she had almost helped destroy. Mom, Priya is going to help you. We are going to get your name off the registered agent filing. We are going to deal with the credit line. And we are going to get you help for the gambling. Real help. Not Ryan's kind of help. She reached for my hand. I let her take it. But I need you to understand something, I said. I forgive you because you are my mother, but I will never trust you the same way again. And that is something you are going to have to carry. She nodded, tears running down her face, mascara in thin black rivers on her cheeks. I squeezed her hand once, then I let go. I walked out of the courthouse into the October sun. The fog had burned off. San Francisco was bright and sharp and clear in a way that only happens when the marine layer finally surrenders. Priya was waiting on the steps. It is over, I said. No, she said. It is just beginning. The federal indictments came 6 weeks later. On a Tuesday morning in mid-November, FBI agents executed simultaneous raids on 3 locations. The first was Ryan's rental condo on Broadway Street in Pacific Heights. The second was Megan Holt's apartment in the Marina District, which Marcus had identified through the IP trace from the Medium article. The third was a storage unit in South San Francisco registered under Meridian Consulting Group that contained 2 laptops, an external hard drive, and 14 boxes of financial documents that Megan had been too careless or too arrogant to destroy. I was at the Lumen office when Marcus called. They picked him up at 7 this morning, Marcus said. He was in his robe, had not even made coffee yet. I tried to feel satisfaction. I searched for it the way you search for a word you know but cannot find. It was not there. What I felt instead was a dull, heavy emptiness. The kind that settles into your bones when a war you never wanted is finally over and you realize that winning cost you things you will never get back. Ryan Calloway was charged with 5 federal counts: wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, computer fraud under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. If convicted on all counts, he faced a combined maximum sentence of 47 years. Jeffrey Banks dropped Ryan as a client the same day. Conflict of interest, his office said. The real reason was simpler. Banks could smell a sinking ship from a mile away, and Ryan was going down in waters so deep that anyone standing too close would drown with him. Megan Holt was charged with 3 counts: unauthorized computer access, wire fraud, conspiracy. She turned on Ryan within 72 hours of her arrest, offering full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her testimony confirmed everything Marcus had documented: the microservice reactivation, the data theft, the fake vendor payments, the Cayman Islands transfers, all of it orchestrated by Ryan, funded by Ryan, directed by Ryan. Megan also confirmed something I had suspected but never proven. She and Ryan had been in a relationship since before our marriage. Not an affair that started during the cracks. A parallel life that existed from the beginning. Every dinner Ryan skipped, every conference he attended alone, every late night at the office that smelled like someone else's perfume when he came home. Megan was there for all of it. 6 years. My entire marriage was a magic trick. The audience sees the beautiful assistant. The magician sees the trapdoor. The Securities and Exchange Commission opened a separate investigation into Callaway Capital. 3 of Ryan's hedge fund clients filed civil suits alleging misappropriation of funds. His assets were frozen. The Porsche Cayenne was seized. The Broadway Street condo was padlocked. The furniture he stole from our penthouse was recovered by federal marshals from a storage unit in Daly City and returned to me in a moving truck on a Wednesday afternoon in early December. Every piece: the Roche-Beaubois sectional, the walnut dining table, the La Marzocco espresso machine, even the hand towels, but not the piano. The piano was not in the storage unit. No one knew where it was. Some things, once taken, stay gone. Or so I believed. Deshawn testified in the federal trial in January. He wore a navy suit I helped him pick out and a tie our father would have approved of. He sat in the witness box and told the truth about everything. The $20,000, the September meeting, the guarantee, the routing number, the fear and the pride, and the shame that made him say yes to a man who treated his family like currency. The prosecutor asked him why he did not come to me sooner. Because I was embarrassed, Deshawn said. My sister built a $15 million company, and I could not keep a barbecue restaurant open without her help. Ryan knew that. He used it. I sat in the gallery and watched my little brother dismantle himself in front of a federal jury so that the truth could be reassembled from the wreckage. It was the bravest thing I had ever seen anyone do. Deshawn was granted immunity in exchange for his testimony. No charges, no record. Priya made sure of that before he ever took the stand. She said it was standard cooperator protection. I knew it was more than that. It was Priya keeping a promise she never made out loud, that the people Ryan used as weapons would not be punished for being human. Gloria entered a gambling addiction treatment program in Oakland the week after the courthouse. It was a 90-day residential facility that specialized in women over 50. She did not want to go. She argued. She said she could handle it herself. She said she was not that bad. I drove her there on a Sunday morning. She sat in the passenger seat of my car, clutching a small suitcase and staring out the window like a woman being driven to her own funeral. This is not a punishment, Mom, I said. It feels like one. That is because you have been punishing yourself for 7 years, and this is the first time someone is asking you to stop. She looked at me. For a second, I saw the woman she was before the slot machines, before the debt, before the costume jewelry and the pawned anniversary chain. I saw the woman who braided my hair on school mornings and sang Aretha Franklin in the kitchen, and told me I was going to change the world before I even knew what the world was. 90 days, she said. 90 days, I said. She went in, she stayed. She called me every Thursday evening at 7 o'clock from the facility's shared phone, and we talked about nothing important and everything that mattered. Priya worked with Helen Zhao to remove Gloria's name from the Zenith Capital Partners registered agent filing. The process took 3 months of legal motions and 2 hearings, but by March, Gloria was clear. No charges, no liability. The line of credit was restructured under a federal restitution order tied to Ryan's case. Gloria's house was safe. Deshawn refinanced the restaurant with a new small business loan. He renamed it. It used to be Mitchell's Smoke and Soul. He changed it to Carter's, our mother's maiden name. He said he wanted something that belonged to him, not to the family name that had been dragged through federal court. I understood that. I did not agree with it, but I understood it. On a Saturday in March, I drove to Oakland and ate brisket at Carter's and sat at the bar and watched my brother move through his kitchen with the confidence of a man who had finally stopped running from himself. "You good?" I asked. "Getting there," he said. "That is enough," I said. It was not a Hollywood ending. Nobody hugged in the rain. Nobody delivered a speech about the power of family. But my brother was sober and honest and cooking again. And my mother was answering the phone on Thursdays, and for the Mitchells, that was as close to redemption as we were ever going to get. The piano came back on a Wednesday in April. I was at the office reviewing the final architecture for Lumine's national expansion when my phone rang. Unknown number, Bay Area, area code. "Ms. Mitchell, this is Sergeant Diana Reeves with the San Francisco Police Department Property Crimes Unit. We recovered a 1952 Steinway Model M from a consignment shop in Sausalito. The serial number matches the item listed in your civil theft report from March." I pulled my car to the side of the road on 3rd Street because my hands were shaking too badly to drive. "Where is it now?" I asked. "At our evidence warehouse on Evans Avenue. You can pick it up anytime after the release paperwork is processed. Should be ready by Friday." I did not wait until Friday. Priya called the property clerk, expedited the release, and by 5 o'clock that afternoon, I was standing in a concrete warehouse in the Bayview. Looking at my father's piano under fluorescent lights, it was scratched. The left front leg had a fresh gouge where someone had been careless loading it onto a truck. One of the keys, the B-flat below middle C, was chipped at the corner. Dust had settled into the spaces between the black keys like gray snow. But it was here. It was real. And when I pressed one key, just one, the sound that came out was the same sound that had come out when I was 7 years old, and my father lifted me onto the bench and said, "This is yours now. Take care of it." The movers brought it back to the penthouse that evening. 2 men and a woman from a piano moving company that Priya had called because she somehow knew the best piano movers in San Francisco. They placed it exactly where it had stood before. On the hardwood. In the rectangular shadow that had been waiting for it like a ghost, waiting for its body to come home. I sat on the bench at 8:30 that night. The penthouse was still sparse, a bed, a desk, a coffee maker, a folding table from Target. And now, a 1952 Steinway Model M in ebony satin. I played Claire de Lune, not perfectly. My hands were stiff from months of typing and tension in courtrooms. I missed 2 notes in the second movement and stumbled through the arpeggios in the third. But I played it all the way through, and somewhere around the middle, somewhere in that space where Debussy's melody opens like a window letting moonlight into a dark room, I started crying. Not the controlled composure I had maintained for 10 months, not the flat voice on the phone with Priya, not the dry eyes at the folding table with Gloria or the empty floor with Deshawn. This was the real thing. The deep, shaking, ugly kind of crying that comes from a place so far down you did not even know it existed until it breaks open. I cried for my father, who bought this piano with every dollar he had. I cried for my mother, who pawned his anniversary chain to feed a machine that gave her nothing back. I cried for my brother, who sold his dignity for $20,000 because he was too proud to ask for help. And I cried for myself. For the woman who held the ceiling up for everyone else and forgot that she was standing under it too. When I finished, I closed the lid of the piano and rested my forehead against the wood. "I took care of it, Dad," I whispered. "I took care of everything." Lumen Technologies went public on a Thursday morning in late April, I stood on the balcony of the NASDAQ market site in Times Square, looking out at the digital billboard 4 stories high that read Lumen Technologies, L-U-M-N, in white letters against a blue background. Below it, the ticker showed our opening price, $22.50 per share. By noon, it was 31. Priya was there. She had flown in from San Francisco the night before and was standing behind the velvet rope with a glass of champagne she had no intention of drinking. Helen Zhao was beside her, smiling for the first time since I had met her. Marcus Chen sent a text that said, "Congratulations, now pay my invoice." I laughed out loud in the middle of a room full of bankers who did not know why. Deshaun called from the kitchen at Carter's. I could hear the smoker running in the background. "I am watching you on CNBC, he said. "You look like Dad." I could not speak for a few seconds. "Thank you, Deshaun." "Go ring that bell, Dom." Gloria called next. She was 6 months out of treatment and living back in her Oakland house, which was now fully clear of liens. She had joined a Thursday night support group for women with gambling addiction. She had not placed a bet in 182 days. She was counting. "I am watching you, baby," she said. Her voice cracked on the word baby. "Your father would be so proud. I am so proud." "Thanks, Mom." "Dominique?" "Yeah?" "I'm going to my meeting tonight, just so you know." "I know, Mom. I am proud of you too." At 9:30, I stepped up to the podium on the NASDAQ balcony. The bell was mounted on a marble pedestal. A brass button, a microphone. A crowd of analysts, investors, journalists, and Lumen employees who had flown in from San Francisco, some of whom had been with me since the co-working space that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. Jalen was in the front row. He was wearing a Lumen hoodie and grinning so wide it looked like his face might split open. I leaned into the microphone. 7 years ago, I started this company in a co-working space with one laptop and a belief that technology could teach every child to read. Today, Lumen serves 1.2 million students in 31 states. Our AI reading platform has reduced third-grade reading failure rates by 31% in partner districts. We have trained over 4,000 teachers. We have reached children in communities that the traditional education system forgot. I paused. The billboard above me was cycling through Lumen's logo. This company was almost taken from me. Not by a competitor, not by the market. By the people closest to me who saw my life's work and decided it belonged to them. I'm standing here today because I refused to let that happen. Because my attorney refused to let that happen. Because a forensic accountant with a very expensive invoice refused to let that happen. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Marcus would hate that. He would also frame the clip. Lumen is not just a stock ticker. It is a promise. A promise to every child who opens our app and hears the words, "You can do this." A promise that someone out there built something just for them. I pressed the button. The bell rang across Times Square. And somewhere in Oakland, I knew a woman with 182 days clean was watching her daughter on television and crying for all the right reasons. Ryan Calloway was sentenced on a Tuesday in June, 8 months after the courtroom ruling. He pled guilty to 3 of the 5 federal counts in exchange for the remaining 2 being dropped: wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. The judge, a federal magistrate in the Northern District of California, sentenced him to 9 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 6. His assets, what remained after the seizures and the civil suits and the restitution orders, were liquidated. Callaway Capital was dissolved. His securities licenses were permanently revoked. Megan Holt received 18 months in a minimum security facility and 3 years of supervised release. She cooperated fully. I never saw her face, not in the courtroom, not in the hallway, not once during the entire process. She existed in my story the way a virus exists in a system. You trace its damage, you neutralize its source, but you never actually see it move. I did not attend Ryan's sentencing. Priya offered to go with me. Marcus said he would drive. Deshaun said he would take the day off from Carter's. I told them all, no. Some doors, once you close them, You do not need to watch the lock turn. Instead, on the evening of Ryan's sentencing, I took Priya to dinner. A small Italian restaurant in North Beach called Tosca Cafe, with red leather booths and opera playing softly from speakers hidden in the ceiling. I ordered a bottle of Barolo that cost more than the chair I was sitting in, and I poured 2 glasses. "I have something for you," I said. I slid an envelope across the table. Priya opened it. Inside was a check and a handwritten letter. The check was for the Kapoor and Associates Legal Aid Scholarship Fund. The amount was enough to put 3 law students through Hastings for their full 3 years. I had set it up through the Mitchell Legacy Trust. The letter was shorter. Priya read it at the table. I watched her eyes move across each line. When she finished, she folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and placed it inside her jacket pocket, close to her chest. "You did not have to do this," she said. "You gave me your card 6 years ago and told me to call when the world tried to take what I built. You answered on the second ring. You stood outside a bathroom door while I fell apart. You carried a single binder like a weapon for 9 months, and you never once let me quit." I lifted my glass. "This is not payment, Priya. This is thank you." She lifted hers. We drank Barolo and ate pasta and talked about things that had nothing to do with courtrooms or shell companies or forensic accounting. She told me about her parents' laundromat, which was still open in Fremont, still run by her mother, who refused to retire. I told her about the time my father tried to teach me to change a tire and ended up calling AAA because neither of us could figure out the jack. We laughed, the real kind, the kind that comes from the other side of something terrible, when you realize you survived it and the person sitting across from you is part of the reason why. At the end of dinner, Priya looked at me across the table. "What are you going to do now, Dom?" I thought about it. About the IPO, about the platform, about 1.2 million children opening an app every morning and hearing a voice that says, "You can do this." About my mother counting days. About my brother flipping brisket. About a scratched Steinway with a chipped B-flat that still played Claire de Lune in the dark. "I'm going to keep building," I said. It is October again, a year since the courtroom, 18 months since Christmas Eve, a lifetime since the woman I was before. I am sitting at my father's piano in the Nob Hill penthouse. The apartment is no longer empty. I bought furniture that I chose myself. Not Roche-Beaubois, not Italian leather. A deep green velvet couch from a vintage shop on Valencia Street. Bookshelves filled with actual books. A kitchen table made from reclaimed wood by a carpenter in the Mission who builds one table at a time and names each one. Mine is called Patience. The Steinway sits where it has always sat. The gouge on the left leg is still there. I decided not to repair it. Scars are just proof that something survived. On the music stand is a new piece I have been learning. Not Debussy this time. Nina Simone. Feeling good. Because sometimes the most radical thing you can do after a war is play something that makes you smile. Lumen's stock closed yesterday at $44 a share. The company now serves 1.8 million students in 37 states and is preparing to launch in Canada and the United Kingdom. We hired a new head of platform security. Her name is Annika Patel, and she is better than Megan ever was, and she does not leave back doors in the houses she builds. Deshaun sent me a photograph this morning. Carter's was featured in Oakland Magazine's annual Best Barbecue issue. He is grinning in the photo, standing in front of his smoker, wearing an apron that says, "The smoke is the secret." He looks like our father. He does not know that. I will never tell him because it would make him cry and he would pretend it did not. Gloria called last Thursday at 7 o'clock. 365 days clean, 1 full year. She told me she bought a real ring, not expensive. Sterling silver with a small turquoise stone. She bought it with money she earned working part-time at a community library in East Oakland, shelving books and reading to children on Saturday mornings. "It is not much," she said. "It is yours," I said. "That is what makes it everything." Priya sent me a text last week. One of the scholarship recipients, a 24-year-old woman named Sophia from Salinas, had passed the California bar exam on her first attempt. Priya wrote, "She reminded me of you, stubborn, brilliant, could not afford the chair she was sitting in, but knew she belonged at the table." I texted back, "That is because someone gave her a card and told her to call when the world came for her." Priya replied with a single period, which, if you know Priya Kapoor, is the equivalent of a standing ovation. I do not know what Ryan Calloway is doing tonight. I do not think about him often. When I do, it is not with anger or satisfaction or grief. It is with the strange, quiet emptiness you feel when you walk through a house you used to live in and realize it was never really your home. He took 6 years of my life. He took my furniture. He took my trust. He almost took my company and my family and the piano my father bought with every dollar in his savings account. But he did not take the thing that mattered most. He did not take me. I close the lid of the Steinway. I stand up. I walk to the window. San Francisco is laid out below me in the October dark. A grid of lights climbing hills and spilling down the other side like something a child would draw if you asked them to imagine a city where impossible things happen. My name is Dominique Mitchell. I built a company that teaches children to read. I survived a marriage designed to destroy me. And I am still here. Playing the piano my father gave me in the apartment I kept, in the city that held me up, building the thing I promised him I would build the night he closed his eyes. Every system has a vulnerability, Dad. You taught me that. But you also taught me something else. Something I did not understand until I sat in a courtroom and handed a judge one document and watched the man who tried to take everything realize he had nothing. The strongest system is not the one without cracks. It is the one that knows where the cracks are and builds around them. I press my hand against the window glass. The city hums. Tomorrow, 1.8 million children will open an app and hear a voice that says, "You can do this." They will. And so will I. Now I have a question for you. If you discover that the people closest to you, your husband, your mother, your brother, were all working against you, would you fight back the way I did? Or would you walk away and start over? Tell me in the comments. And if this story reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, share it with them. Because sometimes the person who needs this story most is the one who thinks they are alone in the fight. And if you are still here, if you listen to every word, then you already know the answer. You are stronger than you think. You just have not been tested yet. Subscribe so you do not miss the next story. I will see you there.